At this point, I would just be like, does anybody have a gun? And if not, I'm running.
Did you hear that?
Slash.
There it is again.
The remains of the missing teens were found severed into pieces.
It's better what you stand.
It's like something out of a horror movie.
That's some scary shit, Bob.
Oh, scary shit indeed, Diana.
Hello, Mr. Slash.
What's up and welcome to the Slasha Brotha podcast. I'm your host, Richard Cunningham, the brother who gushes for the good, the bad, and the most gory cinematic or streamed horror story. And I am back for episode 4, and I'm talking about Random Acts of Violence. The movie is directed by Jay Baruchel, and I'm actually really kind of stoked to talk about Random Acts of Violence because it is a movie that is adapted from a comic book. I love when this happens, and it's also one of my longtime dreams to have this happen for myself, as I'm in the middle of my first comic work, Colorless, and it's horror anthology, not to give too much of it away, and it's my goal in life to have almost every, if not just a few, if I'm blessed enough to get it done, to have those adapted for either TV or film. So to see this film and also to see a black lead is really exciting because there's certain stories that I've written that also have black male leads. So it gives me hope, it gives me inspiration, and also it's another, I guess, layer of seeing a person of color in film just being represented, because to me representation matters. So to see Jesse Williams as the lead playing Todd Wakley is cool because I instantly related to him as a person of color who is also an artist, who is also into horror and gore and graphic detail and storytelling. Todd was someone who I related to as an artist simply because he cares about characters, but not necessarily as in-depth as I would say I do. I'm more about seeing somebody's development. Todd he's less emotional about stuff as a character. But before I get into that, I also want to mention that, yes, Dr. Jackson Avery is playing our lead, Todd Wakley.
Right here. Jackson Avery, originally from Boston.
Hold on. Yes, Jesse Williams. He is Holden McRae in Cabin in the Woods.
You gotta stay calm.
It was really, really cool to see him in another horror movie. You just don't see Jesse Williams do a lot of horror like that. So, I mean, because instantly you see him and you just think, oh, Dr. Jackson Avery.
I mean, you should see me without a shirt on.
It was really fun to see him play this role. However, before I even get into it, I must say, I just watched this movie a second time. Todd's kind of an asshole.
Casserole.
I said asshole.
I thought you said casserole.
Well, I said asshole.
Even though I relate to him, and like I said, yes, representation matters, there's still that difference of personality. Like, if I were to collaborate with somebody like Todd, he would piss me off.
Are you pissed?
Todd is somebody that is very insecure about his writing and insecure about his work. He's not having fun. My approach to putting together comic stories is less, okay, I'm worried about what other people will think. I'm more so concerned about, okay, this is a story that I relate to, and if it hits somebody else's interest, cool. But I'm putting out what I want to put out. He is so concerned and insecure about what everybody thinks that even if they wince slightly at a word, he just goes into straight up Patrick Bateman, just sweating. Oh god, you think the story's so bad, you just want to shred it. It's garbage. Oh, my life. That's what he goes through, and we see that in the beginning with his girlfriend Kathy. Kathy is played by Jordana Brewster. She's Mia Toretto from the Fast franchise. Whatever. I don't really give a shit about the Fast franchise. There's too many movies in that franchise. Whoever decided that this hot rod, sexy chick crime movie needed 10 films? Friday the 13th is one thing. We're not about to go there, okay? Even though Jason went to space.
It's okay, he just wanted his machete back!
They have really just jerked the fast dick so much.
It's all about the tip.
And honestly, it's become so flaccid.
A man's got to put in overtime for me to get off.
And I'm kind of channeling her a little bit today to be a bit of a smartass. If you're watching the YouTube component, you can see I'm wearing my movement glasses, which I use to edit. Free plug, by the way. She's wearing glasses to be incognito.
I'm incognito.
So I figured I'd wear my glasses in honor of Jordana today. And Todd is very sensitive. He's super whiny about shit. This is... I like seeing Todd as a character, but at the same time, like I said, we would not be able to work together for too long in real life, because the slightest critique, he just tosses his little manuscript in the trash, and his girlfriend is literally just saying, Todd, I just didn't understand how that's it. It just ends like, she's just giving critique. He gave it to her, but he's just getting so, oh my God.
You don't know what that does to me!
Anybody, after reading a horror comic and the last word is masturbation, that's gonna floor some people. That's gonna jar some people, and then they're just gonna sit there like, okay, you tried to sound profound, and your last word is masturbation.
Everything else is masturbation.
It sounds like Shock Factor, and it also does sound very teen angsty. And there's a radio host that Todd meets up with later in the movie that does have a quote that he says his work has a bit of teen angst.
Every page drips with Wakley's tired brand of senseless violence and morally bankrupt teen angst. Slasherman is nothing more than yet another toxic element of a dangerous culture that lionizes male violence.
However, the thing about this film is it is a slasher, but it's not conventional. There's use of guns, so that's what I mean by it's not conventional. And I don't mean guns like in Scream where people get shot in the head at the end. I mean guns like there's an AK-47 later in this movie. I mean heavy artillery.
Use that bazooka!
So that's what I mean by it's not typical, just because when I watch a slasher, I don't expect to see guns. It's very Miss 45 to see guns as the main weapon. And that to me is based so grounded in reality. And I get it does divert at certain expectations. However, it's still slightly jarring whenever we have people getting stabbed, people getting their head cut off, but then all of a sudden there's an AK-47.
I need something I can set it off with.
The true opening starts in this art style that is extremely Scanner Darkly. I'm very surprised I remembered that movie just out of the back of my head, because I was sitting watching the movie a second time and I was just like, what art style? I've seen this before, because they're trying to make it seem like Todd's flashbacks or certain dream sequences Todd has, or just moments where he zones out. They have animated sequences and they're very they're trying to be comic book style, but it's not a typical comic book style like you would think a movie would do, or not just a typical animated sequence that you would think a movie would do that's live action and it shifts. Not necessarily, I'm kind of thinking like Kill Bill when it goes from live action to the story of Oren Ishii and it's in an anime style. This was very Scanner Darkly, and it felt like you're really inside the pages, but the reason it feels muddled in art style like a Scanner Darkly is because I think that Todd's mind is very muddled and he's not. And I think that also kind of is on brand. His mind is very muddled because he can't come up with a true ending, which is his struggle as a character. He is the author of a graphic novel horror series called Slasherman.
Slasherman.
And this film, as I said, is based off of an actual comic book. The comic book is Random Acts of Violence, and it is by the writers Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti. And the comic book is also very different from the movie. So right off the bat, we have the setup of characters. This movie is set up perfectly like a slasher. We have our main group. It doesn't have to be a big group. They don't have to be teenagers, but the camaraderie and the comfortableness in the opening scenes with them is very 80s slasher.
Well, at least we know what's for dinner.
After Todd and Kathy squash their little, oh, I'm sorry, I was being a bitch about you, reading my little manuscript, even though it's not even finished and it's not that big of a deal. I'm sorry for getting emotional about it. And they have like this breathing thing that they do with Todd because he gets stressed out, and Kathy just calms him down like,
I'm girl interrupted. She's like, okay, I know you're going through a rough time.
He seems like he crushes his phone a lot when he just gets stressed.
Just shut up and get it done!
He is just so moody. After Todd and Kathy squash their whole thing, we're introduced to the director, Jay Baruchel, who is playing Todd's friend Ezra. Now, Ezra is naturally going to be the smartass. He is very quippy.
You meant that as an insult. Except for Huckster's the nicest thing anyone said about me in months.
It kind of, not necessarily whiny, he just gets on Todd's case a lot because Ezra is his publisher. And he is basically just telling him, dude, you need to get the next issue of Slasherman out there. And the thing about Slasherman is they're all going on their own little tour for the comic to meet and greet with fans. They're trying to get to New York City as their ultimate destination. And Todd's girlfriend, Kathy, she is also a writer as well. The thing about Kathy, she is more focused on the victims of this real-life killer that Todd's comic Slasherman is based on.
He's actually based on a real guy, some of our listeners may remember, isn't that right?
Inspired by the I-90 murderer, that's right.
Todd is from a town called McBain, and his backstory is that his mother was killed by the I-90 killer, and that is what Slasherman is based on. Slasherman, he wears a welder's mask, which I think is a fabulous mask. I don't think I've ever seen a horror movie where we actually have someone wearing a welder's mask, so I can't really say it's based or, inspired by something else. But I think the welder's mask is very original to see, for me anyway. And he, of course, has a machete. He also has this huge, not necessarily the same hunting knife in Scream. It's a lot bigger, a lot thicker. It's definitely a hunting knife, but it's so huge. It's just like 3 sizes larger, it feels like. And just looking at it in the movie, it just has this thickness to the blade that is just very like, damn. That's some serious animal hunting shit right there. We talk mainly about 4 victims, and these 4 victims are the victims that Todd's girlfriend Kathy is focusing on for her book. Because while Slasherman the comic is blood, gore, and disemboweling girls, and just episodes of exploits of this killer, her story is about the actual victims of the I-90 killer. And we find out that the first victim was actually Todd's mother. It's not specifically stated this is his mother, but based off of flashbacks, you ultimately put 2 and 2 together. Okay, this is his mother, Belinda Cooksey.
Belinda Cooksey. She was murdered over Christmas dinner.
She was a single mother, active in her church.
She basically was being stalked by this guy, and we see that at the end. She is singing at the church choir around Christmas time because Belinda, his mother, is murdered on Christmas, and the killer is recording her with this huge video camera, you know, typical standard back in the 80s, I'm assuming. And it's just really like, oh God, like you just, because I feel like that's happened before in real life. And so that's just very, because I just feel like that's a real thing. Like, I feel like there's probably a serial killer out there that was actually like pre-recording people in random, you know, just like situations before they actually died. So that just felt very when the ending shot, when you see he's looking at her while Todd was having Christmas dinner with his mother, she is confronted by the I-90 killer. Todd apparently went to a junkyard at some point in his hometown and saw this guy's face. He was a welder in a junkyard, and the junkyard is his sleigh ground ultimately. And he looked at Todd when he was really little, and they just sort of, and this is also it felt very real for me, because I feel like there are a lot of killers who are like this, or have been talked about that are like this, that even just the slightest look, that was enough to just have them be fixated on you.
Hello. You?
And so this killer got really fixated on Todd and his mother, and he even says he was gonna kill him, but what Todd did was, while his mother was getting murdered, Todd, the only thing he could think to do at the opposite end of the table is draw what is happening. So the I-90 killer comes in and slashes Todd's mother in the face with a knife, and she just looks at him before she falls to the ground. And then we see that the killer disemboweled her guts are all over the table, and he bound her hands like she's praying, and she's got this, it was like a paper crown, I guess, that she and Todd had made. He's also wearing one, and so it's just like I guess a tradition or something. They have, like, you know, just mother-son thing. And unfortunately, Belinda is dead and her hands are in the praying position, and the killer comes up to Todd and he says, I was going to kill you too, but he sees that Todd is drawing what the killer's done, and he says, but you saw me for who I was, and I knew that what I had done was art, and what you had seen was beautiful.
But you saw something. You saw what I did, and you saw that it was beautiful. It
ultimately fueled him to continue killing, supposedly. I'm not going to put that on a child. You know, a kid is traumatized drawing his mother getting mutilated, and, you know, that inspires him to kill more people. I'm not going to say it like that and blame an artistic child who's going through trauma, but this guy is obviously whacked, so he's like, oh, the kid loves me. What I'm doing is art.
You know, I'm a creative genius, and there's no other way to word it.
We get introduced to not just Jay Baruchel, but Todd's assistant, Aurora, who is an artist. She's played by Neam Wilson. Neam Wilson, she was a actor on the show Degrassi.
You want to hang out tomorrow? Do chickens have beaks?
Seasons after I stopped watching, I was the generation that was like Manny, Spinner, Emma, JT, may he rest in peace. Dear God, that was a very dark time for my childhood. Aurora is very cool. I love her ABCDEF off t-shirt that she's wearing when Kathy comes up, because Aurora, she is trying to prove to Todd and Ezra that she is also an artist worthy of putting out her own comic work one day. And she's drawing a picture of a dead dog that's bound up in barbed wire. And she flips out because Kathy sneaks up on her. And of course, Aurora's like, okay, I'm over here drawing a dead dog. From the outside looking in, this is weird.
I look like I'm crazy because I'm out here and I'm drawing this dog. Ezra told me that if I have any ideas that could be used for the final issue, then I should draw them. And I want to prove to him that I'm more than an assistant. I'm a good artist.
But Kathy doesn't judge her at all. She's just like, listen.
Todd does exactly the same thing and way weirder shit.
I'm sorry.
And this is when we really get that Kathy's book is highlighting the victims of the I-90 killer. And she talks about the 4 victims: Henry Dunn.
A couple months after he was murdered, his family just kept getting these cryptic phone calls for about a year or 2.
Ginny Adams, who was a little girl. Apparently she was walking home from school and the I-90 killer just picked her up.
She was 7 years old.
Oh my God.
Of course, she also mentions Belinda Cooksey, Todd's mother, even though she doesn't say directly Todd's mother, because we do get a shot that shows Todd was adopted by a different family at the end, and he's smiling, so I guess he got therapy and got over certain things. However, Slasherman still is, I would say, a way for him to cope and sort of bringing some of that trauma into his work as a way to process. I'm similar. There are a lot of horror stories that I've written that are based off of real life, like a shitty boss I had during the pandemic.
Just drop fucking dead.
Kathy's trying to schedule interviews, and it's also shown that she lands her first big interview in New York City with one of the victims, Henry Dunn's sister, because Kathy gives a damn. And this is why I say Todd's character was kind of insufferable at times, because he is a bit smug. He has this, okay, it's very about me.
This book isn't about you, so...
Nah, kind of. Kind of is, isn't it?
Kathy, she even gets into an argument with Todd because she says everybody is so obsessed with Slasherman.
Nobody ever talks about the victims, and those are the people that matter.
All that they talk about is what was adapted from the tragedy. And now that I think about it, it kind of does have a very Stab feeling when you think about the Scream franchise. And it kind of rings true to this idea that even though these terrible events happen in real life, there's still this disconnect and there's still this wanting to glorify or fetish this violence in some way. Because in real life, if something like what happened to Sidney Prescott happened in real life, we would think, holy shit, that's terrible. We wouldn't necessarily want to jump and make a movie of that. But that's what happens to her. Her suffering is then translated into this, basically it's translated into Scream. It's translated into this hot, sexy teen horror, and all the Hollywood players showed up. And it's just kind of like, damn, like, that is really cold. Sometimes we don't really take in the fact that the trauma that people are going through is not to be, in a sense, not necessarily televised, but it's not meant to function as entertainment.
But, I mean, if one of them fall and bust their face, I'm definitely gonna laugh.
I get the compassion, and I get the heart that Kathy has. And it's also kind of jarring now that I think about it, because Todd's mother was the first victim. And the fact that his girlfriend wants to highlight the victims and actually write a book about their families and the suffering and what they really lost, he just has this bitchy ass, well, it's what it's about, right? It's about Slasherman. That's why you're writing this book. It's about Slasherman. And it's just kind of like, bro, like, she's doing what you probably should have done. You didn't even write about your mother.
Oh my God, you want to talk about mother?
She's actually like, your mom was a person. She meant something. And Todd is just an ass.
You're an asshole.
It was hard sometimes to root for him as a final guy because he has these smug diva moments. Oh man, me and him could not work together in real life. And so once Todd and the crew get to his hometown in McBain, they see this like punky ass dude. One, he's picking at his skin, which is gross. And then they all have this shot where they're outside of the car. And I really love this shot because it just felt very quintessential slasher. Like, you just see the group. They have a good dynamic, especially when they're in the car together. And Aurora, she almost gets them killed because the guy who Aurora almost gets into a wreck with is I guess he is Slasherman in this. The I-90 killer. The I-90 killer is Slasherman, so you know what I mean. Scream, stab. Anywho. So Aurora almost gets into an accident with this guy. Todd, and the thing is, this is Aurora's fault because she's stupidly trying to read the map and also read all the itinerary and everything while managing to drive. And Todd is about to just hop out of the car like he's gonna whoop his ass. First of all, dude, she's completely in the wrong because you don't read maps and try and drive at the same time. And she's just looking down the entire time, like her eyes are off the road so much. I'm just sitting here like, yeah, you're about to hit something.
Oh, should I write them a note?
But Todd just feels like, oh, it's his fault. Okay, bro. And so that was kind of annoying. And then we have Todd and Ezra, his publisher. They go into the store. It's this decrepit store that nobody's ever gonna buy anything in a million years. But they notice an empty rack. And there's only one comic, and it's one comic that probably hasn't been bought since it was published in 1940 something. He looks at Ezra, he's just like, you think what I'm thinking? Yeah, let's fill this place with comic power! Taken from a comic strip and now they're Beetleborg! They decide to get all their Slasherman comics, which one, I wouldn't just give this out for free. Like, I wouldn't just give free issues out, like, and just, okay, let's just leave them in some rinky-dink ass store that nobody's going to go to. Especially when you're leaving them in a store that is in the same town where Slasherman started. And this is also Todd's hometown. It's just very, why? Todd pisses me off only because it seems like he was never truly affected by this. I feel like I would approach this work a different way if this was my experience. He is very, it didn't really happen to me. I mean, you know, so whatever. He's very impersonal about everything. He doesn't have as much of a connection until the murders start happening and it's his friend group and it's people around him. All of a sudden then it's like he gives a shit, but he just has this weird disconnect. And I just thought it was very strange to have this disconnect when it's like your mother was the first victim. They leave the gas station. They have this weird moment. So they spin the rack of filled Slasherman comics now. Todd feels all cool about it. He gives them like the Dogma Jesus, like, it's on the house. And the punky guy who was picking his skin and he's running the store, he just looks at the guys like, get the f*** out of my store.
Good day, sir!
Now, Aurora mentions that they have this radio gig set up with this guy who's supposedly they think he's a fanboy because he's just been like, I need Todd Wakley in my studio ASAP. I need to interview Todd Wakley about Slasherman. The reason he wants to interview Todd so bad is because he wants to give Todd shit on the air.
This was Jenny Adams. Her and I were really close, and then she disappeared walking home from school right along I-90.
I get that this movie is also, it does make you wonder about certain things and question how far is too far and what are you really trying to say in your work, and ultimately what are you really trying to accomplish? Are you just trying to tell a story? And you also have to think of what impact does that have on the reader, because we get a glimpse at Todd's fans and we see the effects that this comic has on them, particularly this one unsettling incel. He has a mock-up of the Slasherman kill trailer that has all these bloodied up female dolls, and like he put so much effort into this. This is like some serious Beetlejuice model in the attic type shit. Like he was dedicated. He even comes up to Todd and says,
Slasherman's like my life, my religion. I find it inspiring.
This is what I think nobody wants when they're doing a horror comic or a horror film. They never want to meet the fan that is so encapsulated by it to where you get the vibe, they're gonna do this to somebody. You know, like, and this guy, it's like the way he's talking about Slasherman, it's just very like, oh, I love Slasherman, like I've already got a woman in my trunk. It's just like, oh, like you don't need to be a fan that hard. Fandom is great, I am all about it, but you don't need to take it to the extreme of like you're scaring people.
How many people were scared? Me too. I was really, really scared. You
see every detail of this model that he's made, and you really understand, okay, this is some dark shit. And that's funny for me to say because, I mean, I've read Friday the 13th comic books, and one of my most cherished comic books is a Final Destination comic. And it's just like, okay, like we see all this, but this is like, and I read even a Hellraiser comic once upon a time, and Slasherman is some dark shit. And the cool thing about this film is the kills that are very graphic. It turns out that these kills are based off of the issue, year, number, and date. So Todd thinks that every time he gets a call from the killer, because I mean, how many movies where the killer is calling you at this point? Yeah, the killer's gonna call you. The killer has you in their Fave 5. Todd, he's at the hotel and he's just chilling. Aurora is drawing outside, and we see this couple at a truck. Now, this couple at the truck, they are arguing about some stupid shit, like her boyfriend was late or something after work, but he got her a puppy, quote unquote, and let me show it to you in my truck. And then when she gets in his truck, he's like, actually, I was kidding you, this is gerbil. Stupid teenage bullshit. At first, I'm instantly thinking when I see the teenagers, though, I'm just like, oh, snap, like, he's about to go ham on these young kids, because the first kills, God, that's weird to say, the first kills in this movie are 3 college kids. The killer calls Todd at the radio station after the radio host gives him shit, and the killer is calling saying that their name is Belinda Cooksey, and Todd is instantly just like, oh shit.
I am your mother! I gave birth to you!
They say the sequence of numbers, and then we all of a sudden are introduced to these kids who were later told their names are Hannah, Adam, and Megan. They're just on a road trip somewhere, I guess, and they're driving down the road, and Megan, she doesn't want to smoke weed, even though her friend Hannah, who's driving, she's like, yeah, Meg's gonna smoke, Meg's gonna smoke.
No, I'm not getting high. Meg's getting high tonight. Oh my god.
But Meg is definitely the Meg of the group.
What's going on? I heard a noise. Is somebody downstairs?
Oh, God, Meg, you startled me. I'm sorry.
Because she starts blowing at the joint. Just trying to be an asshole. And I thought that was funny. All of a sudden, their tire goes flat. It's raining, and they're just mad like, okay, what are we going to do? We don't have AAA. Slasherman's van pops up. And this whole murder scene, I've never seen a murder scene in a movie quite like this. So Slasherman comes out. He's wearing his welder's mask and his suit. I guess he's wearing a slicker at this point. And he's holding like this, it honestly looks like a walkie-talkie. I don't know what the he has, really. Who knows? It's probably a signal jammer, knowing his murderous ass. That's what I would use, a signal jammer. And they're just like instantly creeped out by this guy because they're all outside of the car. I would have not gotten out of the car at all. And they're just sitting there. He doesn't even get out of the car at first. He's just flashing his high beams at them repeatedly. And I at this point, I would just be like, does anybody have a gun? And if not, I'm running. But they just stay there like, no, we called somebody. We're fine.
We are so f***ed.
They go back into the car, completely freaked out. And he comes out. All of a sudden, he's got a knife. It's the same giant, like, big buck knife or whatever that we see throughout the movie with the thick blade. And he's like, I've never seen this before in a horror movie. He's like psyching himself up. He's literally just like, yeah, get it up. Like, it's literally like a Stu and Billy moment is happening in his head.
Yeah, I'm ready, baby.
But he is screaming almost like he doesn't want to do this, even though it's like, okay, you have a choice. Like I said in the Scream podcast, how it felt like they really weren't getting stabbed, they were getting shanked. This was a stabbing for real. Slasherman runs to the passenger door where Adam is sitting, he starts kicking the door first, and then he busts the door open and just starts stabbing Adam, like literally, and I mean he is going deep. He is stabbing this kid, and the girls are freaking out. Hannah is just petrified. Megan in the back, I would literally just, I wouldn't know what to do. Megan just can't move. The guy, Adam, he gets stabbed so many times. He gets stabbed like 30 fucking times. It's so sad. And he's still alive through most of it. He gets stabbed in the hand. And he stabs Hannah in the leg because she's trying to escape. And she falls out and she can't move any farther, and she's left to just crawl in the rain. And we see by the time Adam is dead, he's already gotten to the back seat and he's stabbing Megan, and we just hear Megan screaming. The next morning, Todd, Ezra, Aurora, and Kathy, they're driving to their next destination. They drive past a road stop. They see all the cops, and it's the murder scene from the previous night. And all of a sudden, Sonia Edwards from Slasher Season 1 pops out, and she is apparently the sheriff in this movie. And she is just trying to direct traffic, but then they see this tarp. Holy shit, I have never seen this in a movie before, and this is also not even in the comic book. It's funny, the comic book is totally different from the movie, and I mentioned that briefly before I probably got off track. A lot of the death scenes and a lot of, I guess, the ideas that were in the movie were not in this at all, and also certain characters are not in this. Like, Aurora is not a character in the comic book, for example. And also in the comic, Todd and Ezra, they're both the team of Slasherman. Like, Ezra's not just the publisher. Ezra's actually like the illustrator of some of the death sequences, and it's more so about the height of their success with the Slasherman comics, and then somebody executing murders to give them like their grand ending. So it's ultimately the same idea, but it's just there are gonna be certain things that are different. You know, just character characters' backstories, maybe, or even their races. Like, for example, Todd is black, but in the comic book, it's two white guys. So, you know, just certain differences are going to be coming out, just, you know, in how they look and what's really the crux of how things are playing out. It's totally different. And so this is not in the comic. This is crazy. This is like worse than Human Centipede crazy to me. Like this tops Human Centipede for me. They have this thing in Todd's comic called the triptych. The triptych is 3 mangled, bound women sewn together as a body sculpture. And that's what Slasherman does to these 3 kids, except he doesn't sew them together. He binds them with bungee cords and like leather straps and shit, and it still looks the same. Like they're still posed like the comic. Like, it just picture 3 bodies sitting together, but their arms are mangled and broken, and their whole all their bodies are just bloodied and slaughtered, and it just looks like this gross 3-person like sculpture. That is what is under this blue tarp. It's insane. And all 4 of them see this, and Officer Sonia Edwards is just pissed.
What the tarp? What the Get through it! Move! Now, move!
She's yelling at them because they saw the body. And it's like the wind blew the tarp up. It's not their fault. Either she's yelling at people or just blaming them for people dying.
Even if you didn't kill this girl, in the eyes of everything I hold dear, you may as well have.
She gives them shit after Aurora gets murdered, so later that night, Aurora is drawing by herself, and this is also where we have the 2 teenagers talking by the truck. After the couple leaves, because like I said, after the 3 are killed to make the triptych, I'm thinking, okay, we're gonna get more teenagers. I'm always for that. More dead teenagers in horror movies. I'm all for that storyline. I love a good dead teenager movie. Unfortunately, no more teenagers or college kids were harmed in the making or in the actual sequence of this film, because we get Aurora getting strangled from behind by Slasherman at the second that the van pulls off, and we see that his van is there at the motel. Poor Aurora. I loved her, and I was so sad to see her go. Her death is brutal. First of all, it's scary because he comes out of nowhere after this van pulls away. He's been there this entire time. In fact, he's the guy that's dumpster diving when Todd and Kathy are having a bit of a moment.
Jesus Christ. This fucking day.
He gets startled and sees this guy dumping trash. That was the killer. And so he comes up, snatches up Aurora, but he snaps her neck and then stomps her head. And then by the morning, we see that Aurora's head has been placed outside of Todd's door. Officer Sonia Edwards is pissed at all 3 of the remaining. Ezra was asleep when Aurora texted him, so he feels like shit. And then Sonia Edwards decides to slide the comic book to him, and also slides Aurora's crime scene photo, which is really shitty. It's not like he did it, okay? Yeah, he's wrapped up in this, but at the same time, don't just show it to him like, look at it. You look at what you did. It's like, he was sleeping. Like, don't torture Ezra, you know? But she's just a bitch about it. And then, of course, Ezra is like, okay, Todd drew this. And she's just like, oh, he did it? It's like, no, I said he drew it.
Pay attention, please.
She's just so ready to get somebody. She's just waiting for somebody to just like maybe blink a little bit off, and she's just like cuff them. So she's just way too hype, and it's like, girl, calm down.
I am calm.
Ezra explains Todd drew Aurora's crime scene because it's in the Slasherman comic. So every number in sequence that the killer sends, like I said, is, you know, the issue, year, and date, etc. of the comic. Well, every page has a murder scene. And the first one is the triptych, which Todd gets the call at the radio station. And then after the triptych, we get the gift, which is Aurora. The gift is a part in Todd's comic book where there's a woman who is getting strangled by Slasherman, and then she gets decapitated and her head gets crushed, just like Aurora. The next one is called Wish You Were Here. And this sequence of murders is a family. And in blood, the killer writes, "Wish you were here." Well, the killer is going to execute that in real life, and they realize this because the killer calls again, but it's from Aurora's phone. And the only thing that's left of Aurora is her head. They don't find the body, they don't find her phone, it's just her head in her drawing journal. Well, they get a call from the killer, and the killer is reading off another sequence of numbers, and it's "Wish You Were Here," and that's when they realize, holy shit, like he's taking from the comic book, and they're all freaking out, and then they start freaking out more when Ezra realizes
There's a family ahead of us!
Slasherman is already in the middle of the road, the smoke clears, and there's his van, and you're like, oh shit, what's about to happen? He comes out with an AK-47 and just shoots up the entire car. The dad is probably gone in one bullet. The mom, she gets out. I can't, okay. Save the child. That's all I'm saying. But I get it. She just got shot. She's traumatized. Like, what are you really going to do in that moment?
Hang on, Rick. You've been saying that forever.
But it just seemed like she had no interest in saving the child. You know what I mean? I just... Save the child.
Get that baby!
You know, like, do something. Use your body, like, to shield, like, you know... But this woman was just like, F everybody.
I'm out.
And so Slasherman shoots her through the chest, and she's gone. But then Slasherman is... Because my thing is, it's like, okay... You're stabbing people, you're killing college kids, you're killing families, but then all of a sudden, when it comes to gunning down the girl, he looks away and then just pulls the trigger, and then that's the end of her. We don't need to see more than that. We really don't. But still, it's just like, you're gonna look away. Like, grow some balls, because it's like you've been doing this for a while, and it's also like you killed a little girl way back when, so it's like now you're a bitch about it. Like, okay. He's got his AK-47 and he's just shooting at Kathy's car. Kathy tries to do a bit of a Fast and Furious swoop and get them out of there. Sorry, Mia Toretto, it didn't work because they crash into a ditch. By the time Todd wakes up, Ezra's face has been blown off. I was expecting more for Ezra, just death-wise. As a character, he gave me enough. Like I said, gun deaths in movies really shock me when they're assault rifles. It's almost like there should be somebody in the slasher movie that just comes out of nowhere and just like, whoa, this is not our brand.
They can't have my brand.
The killer, he snatches Kathy and Todd out and handcuffs them. Todd, this is another thing about Todd pissing me off. Kathy, she can accept the fact that she's gonna die. I actually respect this in horror movies when you can accept your fate in a very gracious way. And she even says, and I really love this about Kathy's character, she says,
"It's okay. I don't want the end of my life to be panic and fear.
I want to go out with some damn dignity, man." And she's not going to sit here crying about it.
Stop whining.
Todd, however, he's just like, no, baby, do the breathing exercise with me. We can get through this. And this, I mean, I get you're supposed to have somewhat of a fighting spirit, but in this particular situation, because it's based in real life, there's nothing supernatural here. It just feels like... Accept it, Todd. Like, accept it. It's happening.
It's happening. It's happening.
happening?
The colors are so vibrant. There's honestly a lot of Suspiria moments, and I really appreciate it. Like when Aurora is cast in red before she dies, and there's these huge bright casts of green. When the colors are really intense in this movie, it's fabulous, and it's just really Italian giallo, and with it so hard. The way the colors really come out, and the cinematography is really good. This is just a very well produced movie. Kathy escapes, but she ends up impaling herself on a tree branch, but then Slasherman tackles her, and Kathy went out like a G. She said, "I'm not screaming for you," and she spits blood in his face, and she just gives him the last fuck you before he stabs her. He ultimately disembowels her and kills her the same way that he killed Todd's mother, Belinda. Todd makes it to his old home, and he's got a whole happy birthday to me situation going on. All of Todd's dead friends are at the table, and it's the final reveal. It's not like he pulls off the mask, but we just get the killer, this bald guy who Todd saw as a kid, same guy. It's been him this whole time. Sitting at the table, he's all covered in blood, and he basically just might as well just slow clap at this point, like, you know, like, yeah. Because he is just so smug about it, and he is just like, this is our ending. This is the ending we needed. But the killer is crazy. He wants Todd to kill him to secure their ending, and it's just like, this is our legacy. This is it's very, I'm honestly low-key surprised that this is not Todd's biological father. They didn't go in that direction at all. I don't think it's meant for him to be his dad, or like maybe him and Belinda had a thing and that's what this is.
Out of Pepe.
They could have gone that route maybe. But this is not that. This is just this guy was just so fixated on Todd and his mother. But it just had a very, I am your father.
Fasha is dad. Dad is Fasha.
Maybe it would have made more sense if that was his dad. But he just stabs the guy in the heart and then slashes his throat with a big thick meat blade. He tosses a candle into the Christmas tree, and everything lights on fire, and Todd stays and self-immolates with his dead friends and Kathy. Jordana Brewster starts off with the same quote. However, it ends with the word masturbation, and that's when Todd starts getting all bitchy because it's like, that can't be the ending. Well, the way it ends is while the house is burning up, Todd has finally realized, one, he has nothing left to live for, so this is why he kills himself, but also he realizes and understands now this has to end with him, because otherwise there's going to be more murders. There's going to be another form of inspiration in Slasherman. It's never going to end, essentially, unless it ends with him. And that's what we get with the Scanner Darkly animation. Little kid Todd, he starts burning up, but then Slasherman burns too. It's a horror movie about basically what I would not want to happen to me, because I love slasher stories. I love creating slasher stories. I can't wait to get my work out there and just have people digest it one day, or have it's my dream to have my work adapted. So I related to this on such a personal level, so hardcore. And, you know, like I said, to have the representation of a black artist going through this scenario, it was really cool. I mean, we have a black final guy. He doesn't survive, but we don't get enough black men as the final guy. Spiral is one good example, and this one Netflix movie that I haven't seen, I think it's like Somebody's in Your House or in Your Basement or something. The girl from that one movie with Joey King that was a horror movie, and it's like Wish Upon or something. She's the lead in that, but even then still, we just don't have enough black women as the leads in horror. We don't have enough black men as the leads in horror. We just need more of that. Thank you, Jordan Peele and the others that are getting on that trend, just because it should be normalized by this point. It's like, yeah, but the problem is then the debates become, is it about black trauma? Does it have to be about black trauma? Does it have to be about being a minority and being traumatized? Does it have to be... And sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't really always have to be that. Sometimes, yeah, that story, that element is going to be there. But yes, it is possible for us to have stories where it's not specifically about the trauma that we're going through because of our race, but it is the trauma we're going through because of real life and real circumstance. This is that type of movie. This is not black trauma. This is just circumstance. This was not... And I say this because this is not race-related in the sense of Todd's mother was not killed because she's black. She was killed because this killer fixated on her. It's not based in anybody's hatred or prejudice. It is simply just, this is a killer that just happened to be fixated on this boy and his mother. It's very grounded, it's very cool, it's very straightforward. Some of the realness of the death sequences in this movie just really got me. That is why I'm going to give this movie a whopping 5 slashes. I think it is utterly freaking fantastic. If you're a Grey's fan and you miss Jackson Avery, this is a good movie for you to watch and just have that familiar face. It's a good scare. It's a good, holy shit, that was brutal, but at the same time, I can sleep at night. But even if you can't for a little bit, it's just like, it's okay. It had an effect on you, and I'm glad if it does. If you would like to follow me on social media, you can follow me on Instagram at Slasha Brotha. My personal is Martian Fringe Jr., and my art page is Richard's Kill a Hand. And also, if you are watching the video component of this podcast, because I am on YouTube, you can find my channel, which is the Slasha Brotha channel. I'm trying to get on a trajectory of having my podcast release every Friday. Sometimes I struggle with the videos and getting them uploaded on YouTube. I'm trying to be better about that, but generally my streaming audio is going to be released every Friday. For business inquiries, you can email me at my professional, richardwcunningham3@gmail.com. And until it is time to slay another day, I will see you guys later.